This SoonerScoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. From the big plays to life's everyday moments, see it all in sharp focus with LASIK at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIK.
Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosevich. George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. A victory Monday of sorts in these parts. The Oklahoma City Thunder win the World Championship on Sunday night. It was a late Sunday night. How about that?
I mean, yeah,
We took a nap. We took a nap today.
You were in the trenches at the game last night.
It was a lot of fun. It was unbelievable. Epic vibes throughout Oklahoma City. Even just driving around today, you could feel it. The parade coming up on Tuesday.
I will say, I probably look ridiculous decked out in this gear. I look like I was on the team or something, but there was a lot of people still at Dick's Sporting Goods this morning buying gear.
I can imagine. At least you took the sticker off the hat.
I did.
You took the sticker off the hat. A lot of people.
I honestly probably won't. What's funny is I probably bought about $180 worth of gear. Probably will never wear it. Like I probably will not be wearing this shirt or hat.
Put it all in
often.
You'll just put it all in the case.
Yes.
Put it all in the case.
Yeah.
I think everybody should get one of their own Larry O'Brien.
I do really like the
personalized
hats.
Trophies.
I like the hat. I don't think I'll be wearing it too often, but I do like it.
All right, very good. Well, the Thunder, awesome. Oklahoma football over the weekend, really good. They pick up the commitment of Bowe Bentley. We will welcome in Josh McCuistion here in a second to talk about everything that went down over barbecue weekend, which ended up being pretty productive for Oklahoma on the recruiting front. But before we welcome in Josh, let us tell you about our good friends over at William & Lauren. As the official custom clothier of OU football, William & Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. Visit William & Lauren in Oklahoma City, or you can do so in Tulsa. I know the great Sam Stoya has gone by the Tulsa location, or online at williamandlauren.com. That is williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as Oklahoma football. William & Lauren been with us all season.
Yeah,
good people, and got the suit ready to go for the big wedding here.
And that's the
coming
thing.
up.
You asked me earlier, what's next now that the Thunder have won the championship? Well, I have a wedding in 19 days.
A wedding, and then we really do go into football season.
Yeah, media days are like 4 days after my wedding, so it's gonna be here quick.
Unbelievable. All right, let's welcome in Josh McCuistion from Houston HQ, as we do every Monday here on the Recruiting Report. Joshua, congratulations! You are a world champion. Feels good.
It feels right. It feels like that's the way it was supposed to be. And
sure.
I am with George. I have spent entirely too much money on merchandise already. I have the shirt that George has on its way to me. Even Express ordered it. Like the shipping was sped up because I just couldn't wait for it. So, I fanned out real hard last night.
I think that every once in a while it's okay to just completely fanboy and take advantage of what was a memorable night in Oklahoma City.
It was funny because I brought it home and I got my fiance, I got Erin a shirt as well. And she was like, I'll probably only wear this to the parade and then never wear it again. And I was like, well, it was worth the $45 or whatever.
It's going to be very warm if you decide to wear a black T-shirt to the parade on Tuesday morning at Oklahoma City. All right, let's get into the football side of things. Oklahoma football over the weekend. It kind of started before it really even got going into Friday evening. Bowe Bentley makes the announcement. He commits to Oklahoma. We have finally gotten to the end of the 2026 quarterback carousel, whatever you want to call it. Jadon O'Neal decommits. He did commit to Florida State over the weekend, but for Oklahoma, Ben Arbuckle, they get their guy, Bowe Bentley, going in. It kind of kicked off what was a massive recruiting weekend down in Norman. Josh, let's just start here in terms of not necessarily fit, but when you talk about Bowe Bentley, and I know that we talked about him over the last, it feels like month and a half, 2 months really, maybe even since January, since they offered him. This is the guy that Ben Arbuckle wanted, and they went out and got the guy.
Yeah, guys, maybe the timeline didn't play out exactly the way we drew this up. As we were talking about it since probably February, March, kind of how we thought this would go. But I think the end result is the same. This is what we thought would happen. This is what I believe Oklahoma wanted to happen. Was they wanted, above all other things, they wanted Bowe Bentley. That was the guy that really, since Ben Arbuckle arrived, that was the guy they kind of earmarked. And I've actually got, for those that were swept up in Thunder fever, or, maybe on the weekends they don't check the site as much as they should. I actually had a pretty fun story with his offensive coordinator, Nathan Elliott, and we'll have another one hopefully tomorrow morning is kind of what I'm looking at. Where the first one was kind of more about like Bowe becoming the player he's become. This one's more about like, special plays, stuff that they remember when they were like, oh, okay, this kid's a little different. So kind of a fun perspective. But yeah, guys, this is huge for Oklahoma. This is the guy they needed. And I think with some of the buzz, and we're going to talk about some of it here a little later, some of the buzz you're hearing about receiver recruiting, I don't think it's an accident. Like I think there is some correlation there.
What was kind of maybe the most, and everybody can go read the story with his offensive coordinator from Salina, Texas. They won a state championship a year ago. I think it broke a 17-year drought for the Salina program to get back to the top of one of the bigger classifications in state of Texas, high school football. But was there something that like really stuck out to you that I know that when Oklahoma's had these quarterbacks that commit over the last 10 years, we'll say, there's usually something that sticks out about their game. And I think that when you see John Mateer and what we expect John Mateer to be, there's a lot of similarities there, right, Josh?
Yeah, this is a guy, guys, I had heard that he was a pretty good soccer player, but what I also picked up on is he's also a really good lacrosse player, apparently. Like, so he's a kind of again, and that's part of the draw that we've talked about, is he is a very good athlete. His brother's a college baseball player, so and that was something that Nathan Elliott is their offensive coordinator's name, and Nathan kind of mentioned, they are like their whole family are just athletes, like they're all just good. They, we knew about Bowe when he was in 6th grade, and they were already kind of waiting for him to get along and thought maybe he could be something special. What I will say that I think is interesting, that's I mean, again, we've talked about the arm talent and the athleticism. What I think is really interesting, and we're learning this more and more, how much the mental makeup is the differentiator sometimes in all these really talented quarterbacks. This is a guy that, we knew he didn't start at quarterback as a sophomore year. We've talked about that some. He was actually kind of supposed to be the guy. They kind of thought like it was a true competition between he and a senior, and he didn't win the job. And, it was kind of a deal where they just, and I think Nathan said it exactly, they just didn't feel like he had as good a fall camp as the senior did. And so, as the year went on, Bowe continued to improve, and he eventually, they built some packages out for him and did some different things. But what he said is, after that season, Bowe put all his focus into football. Like everything just became football. I'm going to be the starter. I'm going to do this. And his first year as being the starter, his first year with football is his sole focus. Salina goes 15-0 and wins a state title. That says something. So I just think that's kind of interesting, and I love that he really is a kid. All these guys talk about, earned and that kind of stuff. He had to earn it. They made him earn it.
Josh, you mentioned obviously all the skills he has. What about his leadership, the personality traits? And I know we'll get into him probably recruiting, some of these guys to finish out this class, but what's maybe stood out to you from talking to people around him in terms of, what comes with being a quarterback in that leadership aspect?
Yeah, and that's something that will be in the second story that I'm going to, because I talked to him a little bit about that, because I thought, I'm with you, George. Like, I think that is maybe it's just present on our minds right now because, again, whatever you want to say about Jackson Arnold and John Mateer, the difference in the way you hear players talk about them right now, I think is something that sticks out to all of us. Like, just, John Mateer's come in, he's really taken the reins from a leadership perspective and been very forthright with that kind of stuff. And I wanted to see, what's Bowe like in that regard. And he just seems to be a guy the team really respects. He does have some of those leadership qualities. He's willing to, tell people they're not doing what they need to be doing and that kind of stuff. So not in a tyrannical way, from my impression. But again, I got the impression that he is a guy that is not afraid of that role. And I think we sometimes just assume quarterbacks are that guy. Like they're just going to be the bulldog that goes in and, starts pointing fingers and telling people, you need to follow me and we're going to do this the right way, that kind of stuff. And that's not always the case. That's not everybody's temperament. But I do think it's not coincidental, the stuff that we hear about Mateer, and this, at the same time we hear that Mateer and Bentley seem to have really hit it off and seem to have a good relationship.
Bowe Bentley wasn't the only player to commit over the weekend. Trace Rudd commits, the 5-star kicker, which I think it's been pretty open. We're not the biggest kicker analysis guys, but he comes in very, very highly touted. But Beau Jandreau, he joins Beau Jandreau joins brother Nico Jandro in the 2026 class. Josh, we talked about it on Friday just in terms of how good of an inside linebacker Beau is and where this kind of goes from here. I mean, obviously, you get both of the Jandro brothers in the boat now. You beat out Texas, who could have been probably the closest competition for his services. Would that be accurate? And just kind of talk about the player that he is. I know that we have talked about it before, but just kind of, again, maybe for people that haven't checked in on the program, this is a guy that they definitely targeted and wanted to kind of be the next big thing there on the linebacker group.
Yeah, I mean, guys, this is, I've talked about this a lot. When you're going out and landing 3-star guys, and you're trying to, I always compare it to Vegas. Like, you're trying to beat the house. Like, you're trying to be smarter than everybody else, and you can pull that off sometimes. And then there's guys that I see, and I'm like, maybe I'll be wrong on this, but I don't know. I don't know how this is going to play. Beau Jandreau is a guy I liked on his junior tape, but I've talked to several people that saw him this spring out at Chandler Hamilton practices and were like, this guy's going to a different level. Like, he's playing, like, as much as obviously, the guys I'm talking to, they offered him. They clearly liked him, but it is beyond that. It's like, okay, this is I put something out on X where I had somebody tell me, like, he's a top 10 linebacker in the country. Like, they believe that. And so I think this could be one of those guys kind of, and I'm not making the comparison because they're very different as players, but kind of like Danny Stutzman, where you said, man, if this all comes together and this works out, you could really have something here. And I think that's what you're looking at because, again, guys, there's not like a huge depth behind Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie at linebacker. There's a lot of questions of what it's going to look like kind of in 27, and beyond. So to have something there, you're like, okay, like maybe he could be that kind of guy. And I think he also, from the people I talked to, is a big mentality guy. Like, I mean, Lord, look at the kid. Like, he works. Like, working out, doing the stuff off the field is not going to be a problem for Beau Jandreau.
I think
Eddie showed me the photo.
He put out a picture of the Jandro brothers and Owen in the OU. I think it was like the facility, possibly
Ripped.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, God bless.
Even if I didn't think he could play, I'm too scared to say otherwise.
Sure.
So I'm not going to make that. Yeah, like I live in fear of dudes that are that jacked.
Josh, I did want to ask you about Nate Dreiling because we talked about Ben Arbuckle and obviously the big first win for him and getting Bowe Bentley. But how about Nate Dreiling and the job that he did recruiting Beau?
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people will say, well, you got Nico and then, this was always going to happen. And I think there is something to that. Like, I think that's fair. But at the same time, this is a guy, I can't say it enough. He chose Oklahoma over Oregon and Texas. I mean, two of the, premier NIL programs, two programs that were in the playoff last year that seemed to have everything rolling in the right direction. And he chose Oklahoma that, I think we all have some belief that Oklahoma's going to get off the mat this year, but nobody can know. We don't. So I think they sold a vision. I think they sold an idea. And, of course, the idea of playing with his brother is also a huge part of that equation. So, again, guys, it doesn't surprise me. And, again, we don't know Nate Dreiling well, but what you guys told me from spring practice and then what I saw at the camps this summer, I would think guys that are kind of that pure linebacker type of personality are going to love Nate Dreiling. And that's exactly what Beau Jandreau feels like to me. A guy that, he's like one of those guys that would have played 25 years ago in the Big Ten and had like 37 tackles in a 10-7, Ohio State-Michigan game.
really good start for Nate Dreiling to get his foot in the ring with the commitment of Beau Jandreau. We'll say on the defensive side of the ball, there was obviously, we talked about it on Friday, there was 13 official visitors over the weekend. 3 of those were already committed. Somebody that wasn't, that's been a high target for Oklahoma, Jake Krull out of IMG Academy. We had a story on Jake's weekend. Steve Wiltfong wrote about it on Sunday evening. Might have got lost in the mix with all the Thunder news, but it sounds like, Josh, from everything on the back end of this visit, it went about as well as it could for Oklahoma in terms of recruiting Jake Krull, everything but a commitment. I mean, he's saying all the right things. It seems like it's progressing in a right direction for Oklahoma.
Yeah, Eddie, I would say the only thing I can come away with that gives me any pause is that it wasn't like there wasn't a commitment, and
sure.
B, it's not quite that level of like, we got him. You know, like you don't get quite that from what you're hearing. But again, he loved the visit. OU gets the last shot. Now, there's some talk that Jake may run this out a ways, like that he might even take some visits into the season. I've got to wonder, when I think the choice may come down to Florida and Oklahoma, I think in both cases he may want to see what those two schools look like. Like,
sure.
What does it look like? What direction are they heading in? Like, because they're very similar situations. They have very similar, like promising quarterbacks, but we don't know exactly what they've got.
Yeah.
A lot of changeover, 2 coaches that there's some real questions about. Like there's again, like I don't think you could have more similar setups. So I think we'll have to see. But again, I still think what makes me think it's Oklahoma, if they check the boxes he wants to see, I guess if that's what this is, his relationship with Miguel Chavis. Like, he is a Chavis guy. Guys, and I got to tell you, I was talking to, and I'm going to blank out on who it was right this minute, but a player on the offensive side of the ball. And I was like, who'd you really enjoy? He's like, I love Coach Chavis. He's one of those guys that these guys, he brings so much energy and he's so active. Players just love him.
And when's his commitment date? He has a commitment date set, but Josh, you kind of are hinting maybe he could push that back.
Yeah, I don't have it on my list. Now, I know you're right, George. He has put it out. I went looking for it this morning because there's a story up on the site where we have all the commitment dates, and I kind of had the same idea. Like, I knew he had presented one, and I could not find it. So I don't know if maybe he took it down, if he's changed it. But I want to say it was like later in July, like July 20th, something right along those lines. So I don't think there's any rush either way, but there is some talk that maybe he's going to drag this out a little bit, and guys, it'll give us something to talk about in recruiting reports, going into the season, rather than, hey, look how good the 26 class is, or talk about 27 guys.
Jake Krull, the new Bowe Bentley, I guess. Yeah. We'll just talk about it every week. Texas, Florida, Ohio State, Colorado, Ole Miss, all teams that are involved with Jake Krull. Let's get back to the offensive side of the ball, though, because I do want to talk about the wide receivers that were in town. And I know that this is kind of one of the maybe one of the bigger underlying storylines coming out of the weekend. You get Bowe Bentley on Friday. We talked about it on Friday, how much that would help if he was just going to be around those guys for the weekend, knowing that he's in the boat. You had Jordan Clay, you had Craig Dandridge, as well as Daniel Odom in town this weekend. And Josh, it seems like, let's just start with Daniel Odom. I know that there had been a lot of questions. We talked about it on Friday going into the weekend, coming out of Jadon O'Neal's decommitment, where that was going to leave Daniel Odom, the friend, obviously, of Jadon O'Neal. Maybe we leave this weekend and his official visit to Norman thinking that he's going to stick around in this class.
Yeah, I guess I would say surprised, but more than anything, I'm impressed with the work Emmett Jones has done here to stay in that race. Because, guys, we talked about this on Friday. We've talked about it multiple times. If Jadon O'Neal hadn't been committed when he took his trip, there's no way Daniel Odom commits, in my opinion. Like, I just don't think that happens way back in January. It's such a funny connection because Daniel Odom commits, I believe it was 2 days after Oklahoma offered Bowe Bentley way back in January at that first junior day, I think on January 25th. Mm-hmm. So there is just a little bit of overlap there. But from what I can gather, there was some stuff I want to say I had seen something when Bowe Bentley committed, I think on his Instagram, Daniel Odom had like quote tweeted and was like, hey, man, like kind of showing some enthusiasm about it. And you're like, okay, maybe this door is as open as I'm hearing it is. But it sounds like he loved his visit, really likes Emmett Jones, fits very well into what we've talked about, all the size they want to bring in at receiver. He's a big guy. Obviously, a chance to keep the door open at a place like Bosco in California is a great idea under any circumstance, much less a player that you like. So, yeah, guys, coming into the weekend, I thought maybe best case was a coin flip for OU. I would be kind of surprised if he isn't at Oklahoma. Like, I think that's the direction that's trending right now.
What's kind of the prevailing thought from Craig Dandridge weekend? Obviously, when you go down to Georgia, it's going to be hard. Going down to Milton High School, Craig Dandridge, a 4-star wide receiver, had his visit go over the weekend and the seriousness with Oklahoma and interest level.
He is one of two guys in this group that's really tough for me to read, him and Zach Turner. With Craig Dandridge, I got the impression it went really well. I talked to someone who was around him most of the weekend, and it sounded like there was a lot of reason for hope there. At the same time, I talked to someone else who was around him plenty, and it was kind of a, man, we did everything we could do. Georgia may be really tough to beat. Like, it's kind of the same thing that we thought coming in. And a lot of it, guys, is Georgia wants him really badly. So I know, again, people kind of say, oh, lower 4-star, he's not the top 100 guy, whatever. If Georgia really wants you, that's a good sign. That's a good start. Those are the battles you want to be fighting if you're Oklahoma. But what I will say, if there's any position where Georgia seems to struggle and loses battles that you wouldn't expect them to, it's at wide receiver. So everything in me tells me it's going to be Georgia. They're the home state school. They've been in on him. They're really pushing for him. All these things that make sense, but OU gets the last shot. I was told his family really liked Oklahoma, was super impressed with the Soul mission. I think that really hit the right notes with them. So it's a tricky thing. Again, he's supposed to decide later this week on, I believe, Thursday. And I would pick Georgia right now, but it's one of those things like, tune in. This could change. Like, I'm not sure of where I'm going to come out on this on the day of.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, and I know there's more receivers to get to. Josh, I mean, do you have any sense of how this is going to play out with all these guys? Because you have Dallas Dickerson.
I was going to say, you should mention that Dallas Dickerson is making his announcement on June 24th, which is tomorrow. On Tuesday, another Georgia product. And then you have Jordan Clay in the mix. I want to get to him in a second.
And I was also going to mention Davian Gross. I mean,
there's a number of guys, and it seems like for not minimal spots, because we've talked about it, you're not going to turn down somebody if they have that talent level, but they do have to start making some decisions, and maybe these dominoes start falling to a certain extent here over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so you've got, this situation. Zach Turner is a really interesting one because I talked to some people that thought that went really well. And again, I just cannot overstate the relationship he has with Emmett Jones. That is now our guy, Steve Wiltfong, who, guys, we know is nails. He put in a prediction for Miami this morning.
Okay.
I don't doubt Steve. But I can tell you that it doesn't feel like a fight Oklahoma's giving up right now. So, like, I don't think they feel like they're out of it. So we'll see. Again, I don't know what that entails. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some NIL jockeying back and forth. Like, there's some things that are up in the air. But yeah, I still like where they are with Jaden Pettit, who visited on June 6th. I think that's a race Oklahoma still leads at this point. Guys, the one that's and the two that have flipped, and you guys talked about them, Dallas Dickerson, I put in a prediction, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday of last week. No, it was Friday. It was during Scoop. And I put in a prediction, led, and now there's a lot of Kentucky talk.
Interesting.
On the flip side, Davian Gross has been a guy who was like, Baylor. I keep hearing Baylor. Now all of a sudden you're hearing a lot of Oklahoma. And he's one of the guys when I talked about Bowe Bentley and the impact. This guy's from Frisco. He's just right down the road from Salina. He's very aware of Bowe Bentley. So I've got to think that is a interesting possibility. And if Bowe Bentley and Davian Gross bumped into each other at some point in North Dallas, that wouldn't shock me if that was kind of arranged at some point or another.
Davian Gross from the same high school as Ryder Mix, obviously currently in the class, right? Lone Star, as
Marvin
well
Mims.
as Marvin Mims. Yeah, no doubt about it. So there is like a
Ashton
connection
Genty
there.
as well.
Ashton Genty as well. That's Frisco Lone Star has been a pretty good program there in the DFW area over the last 5, 6, 7 years. So we shall see. Speaking of other wide receivers from the state of Texas, San Antonio Madison wide receiver Jordan Clay. We talked about him. You'd seen him at the Navy All-American game as well as the Under Armour event down in Houston. Where is OU and Jordan Clay coming out of the weekend after his official visit?
Kind of like Davian Gross. You'd heard Baylor. You'd heard a lot of Baylor. Now I think it's OU or Baylor. Like I think it's pretty tight for him. I would probably still lean to Baylor just because I think they've done such a great job building a relationship with him and making his family feel like he was just an absolute priority, and again, you talk about Gross. I don't know what they're having these conversations with this guy, but whoever their wide receiver coach is, he's doing a solid job for him. But I do think Oklahoma could pull this off. I think that steal is possible. It's kind of a 60-40 Baylor for me in my mind right now. Again, I can't overstate how big it is in a recruitment like this to have the last shot. That's why OU loves having these final weekend visitors. Eddie, we talked about it, and again, this is not on you. This is my fault. We had it at 13 when we recorded on Friday for official visitors. They ended up being 16. We had a couple of guys sneak in later. Daniel Norman from St. Thomas Aquinas and Jacob Eberhart. So a couple of guys that I just didn't have on my list early on. So, and I frankly forgot to add Ryder Mix. So that one is just 100% egg on my face. But so huge weekend, and this is why they do that, because they want to have the last word with these guys. And now that they are all going to sit down and probably make decisions the next – I mean, some of them already know what they're – Beau Jandreau, he knew when he left Norman what he was doing. So, I think OU's got a chance here. But what I will say, I think wide receiver is going to work out just fine. It's another one of those situations where we're just going to figure out what it is.
I was just about to ask you, Josh. We named a lot of wide receivers that they're after. I'm sure that, if they can land 3, 4 of those guys, they'd be ideal. Is there one or two of them that you'd say, though, are their top priority guys that you're like, they desperately want to try and land that guy?
I would say Jaden Pettit might be the guy on the outside. Like that feels like a guy they really like. It's kind of my impression. I think they'd love to have Gross or Dandridge, but I think maybe they're seen kind of similarly, and kind of what their role would be. So it's kind of a get one of them. Don't let both of them get away. Get one of those guys, and I think that would be pretty. They'd be pretty pleased with that. And again, if you can get Dallas Dickerson back, kind of trending in your direction, great. But I think that's part of it too. Is now again the visits are over. Kids know where they want to go. Now we do a little bit of NIL shuffling, and everybody's got to figure out what they're willing to dish out for some of these guys.
Josh, you mentioned him in a little bit of a newer name to me, but Jacob Eberhart did sneak into Norbit over the weekend, 6'1", 210 out of Kirkwood High School there in St. Louis, Missouri. Sounds like Oklahoma's made at least things very interesting for his services. And you mentioned before we got going, it sounds like maybe some Illinois family ties might be hard to beat there, but they're certainly in the mix.
Yeah, this is a guy that played at I'm sorry, not him. His father played at Illinois in the late 90s, and really, for those that don't know, he lost both his parents at a young age. Like, he pretty amazing story. And there's, if you want to go search him up, they've done some spots on him, on local news there in the area, and he's an impressive kid. So I think what you're gonna have here is kind of a heart versus head is wrong, because I think he loves Oklahoma. I think he loves the soul mission. I think it speaks to him to go help other people. Sure. He knows what he's been through, and I think that is a thing that he relates to. At the same time, honoring his father, doing some of that stuff, and playing in Illinois, that has meaning too. And how could you fault him for it? So I think this is one of those deals where OU really, really wants him. This is a big, you mentioned it, 6'1", 210. This is Michael Boganowski type safety type of guy. This is a come downhill, plays in the SEC. He's going to clean out running backs. Like, this is a really, really talented guy that, again, fits so much of what OU wants in the locker room and what he's about and that kind of stuff. So this is going to be, and I again, people will look at it and tell themselves like, I don't know what to make of that. Is that a big win? This would be a big win. This is a guy OU really likes.
Josh, does he have any sort of timeline on when he wants to make a decision?
He really doesn't, to my knowledge. Now, Jacob is a guy that I spoke to a lot early on, and then I hadn't, again, just full disclosure, hadn't heard his name as much, and I really thought this was coming down to Nebraska and Illinois. OU just kind of kept fighting and got him to come in. I want to say this was his second trip. I believe he might have been there for the January 25th weekend, if I remember correctly. So this is a guy I haven't had as much contact with over the last month or two. So I'm playing catch up a little bit. But my understanding is that he has not set a date yet. I kind of feel like he's one of those guys that he'll just you may just find out about. Like, he just kind of like Hayes Foster's just going to tweet something out and we'll know one way or another. So that's what I would be watching for. But again, he's also a kid. For those that don't know, Kirkwood's head coach is Jeremy Macklin, a guy
crazy.
That I know a lot of OU fans will remember as a Missouri guy. Probably don't remember that he was a long-time OU commitment before he went to Missouri.
Sure.
So Jeremy's broken OU's hearts once before. I'm sure Brent Venables will remember that because he was on the staff at that point in time. He's probably going to hope Jeremy and I guess Jeremy's pupil won't do it to him again.
No doubt. We'll keep an eye on Mr. Eberhart here moving forward. A couple more to get into. Taja Overton made the visit over the weekend. I know on Friday we talked about him as maybe one of those guys that was going to pull the trigger over the weekend. I know that coming out of his Ole Miss visit, there have been some crystal balls and some predictions coming in for Oklahoma. Where do things stand with Taja Overton coming out of the weekend, the defensive tackle out of Owasso?
Yeah, Eddie, another guy I put a prediction in for on Friday, and I need to change it. I don't think he's going to end up at Oklahoma.
Interesting.
From some of the things I've talked about.
Is that his decision, or is Oklahoma maybe going in a different direction?
I think Oklahoma's going in a different direction. This feels a lot like Caden Jones. Is the best way I can say that. I think Oklahoma likes Taja Overton. I don't want to present it any other way. They absolutely do. They would love to have him. I think in a world where Oklahoma is trying to make good market decisions, I think they are having to, is the number that this is going to take, are we going to get what we want to get out of that chunk of our roster?
Maybe something similar to
payroll.
Maybe something similar to the Will Conroy situation.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Where, and again, I like what Oklahoma State's doing in state. They are making a focus. They're getting some guys. They're trying to win some battles to, because guys, for so long, Oklahoma State, like if OU and OSU offered, kids were going to OU. Like there wasn't any debate about that. And I think they're trying to fight that battle a little bit. And maybe in doing so, they're probably overpaying a little bit above what they would like to, what the market says, those kind of things. But hey, a win's a win. So, you take it any way you can get it. But that's my read on the situation because, and I know people say, oh, it's sour grapes. Guys, look back. Taja Overton released a top 6, I think, in late April. Oklahoma State wasn't even on it. They weren't even on the thing. So it's hard for me to believe that they just recruited that well. I think they've made some moves, and I think again, I'm not faulting them at all. I think it's a smart play, trying to build up their name in state. Hopefully that'll help them land some more players. I think it's a good, savvy decision for Oklahoma State. I just think it's a deal where Oklahoma says, is that something we need to do? And then you kind of, it opens up a whole new question that I don't know we want to go into today of kind of where OU pivots to on the defensive line, because they're going to have to make some decisions and make some moves of their own if this plays out like I think it's going to.
Just quickly, Josh, we don't have to, like you said, dive completely into it, but is there a name that you're like, okay, I think Oklahoma's going to go back to that person or whoever?
The two that come to mind, the first one is T-Ron Richardson, who visited on June 6th. Really loved his visit. I haven't heard a ton on that front, but I think part of that was born out of, I think Oklahoma thought they were going to get Tavian Branch. So, that kind of changed it. And in that conversation, do you now go back to Tavian Branch and say, okay, maybe we weren't willing to do that when we thought we were going to go for Taja Overton, but we can do, maybe we can do a little bit more with our NIL here for Tavian Branch, maybe a guy that they value a little bit more, and kind of do it that way. So there are a lot of possibilities here, but those are the first two that come to mind, is either kind of circling back around to Tavian Branch or looking, at kind of T-Ron and trying to close that deal.
Two names on the defensive end group that were in Norman over the weekend. Daniel Norman out of St. Thomas Aquinas there in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, one of the national programs out there, as well as DeAnthony Lafayette from Florida, from Orlando, Lake Nona. Where do things stand with both of those guys? I know we talked about Jake Krull a little bit ago, but both those guys were in, and obviously guys that Oklahoma is very intrigued by.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot of optimism on both of these guys. And I feel like other than Taj, I feel like everybody he's getting them all. Like, I hate that it sounds that way, but I do. I think the weekend went really well. They're not going to get all these guys. Some of it, the post-visit high will cool off, and some of these guys will go back to what they were thinking before. But I do think Oklahoma gave a lot of these guys something to think about. And with these two, Lafayette, we talked about this on Friday. The thing I kept hearing was in-state. Is he going to get out of state? Is he going to get out of state? If he is willing to leave the state, I think he'll pick Oklahoma. It's just an answer I don't have just yet. Florida's involved, Miami's involved. Like, there's some choices for him there where he doesn't have to go that far from home. But my impression is that he really likes Oklahoma, the chance to play with Jake Krull. And again, you have to remember, guys, and we're not going to talk a ton about the commitments. Brian Harris rescheduled his visit weekend to be around Jake Krull and, as well as DeAnthony Lafayette. So there may be some flowers needed for Brian Harris before too long, because I think that guy, between X and all the social media stuff and everything else going on, that dude is recruiting hard for Oklahoma. And to finish up the question, sorry, I kind of diverted there. Daniel Norman, another guy that Oklahoma offered, I think, in early May or late April. Like, they haven't been involved that long. So to get him in for the final weekend, kind of under the radar, that was kind of one of those things like, Josh, this guy I think's coming in, and you just started hearing it like mid-Friday afternoon. It was kind of a strange deal. But big, long, athletic guy. I like a lot of that. Kind of like we were talking about as well with Daniel Odom. St. Thomas Aquinas, sign you up for all of those guys. I mean, that's, Nick Bonito, like you can name it. There's been some good edge rushers for Oklahoma from that program. So and again, I think Oklahoma's got a good chance with both these guys.
Josh, how do you see that edge room kind of shaking out? It seems like obviously Jake Krull's the number one priority there at that position, but you mentioned the other two guys already have Matthew Nelson in the fold. Like, is it, try to get Jake Krull and then one of the other two guys?
Part of me wonders if they could actually say no to either Lafayette or Norman. Norman because he's at St. Thomas Aquinas, Lafayette because he helps you with Krull as well. Like, there's kind of twofold things there in both cases. Now, 4 defensive ends, that's a lot. But, guys, the thing it also forgets is you still have KJ Ford sitting out there. Who I had a note on the board today for those who haven't read it. Go check that out. That communication is not closed. Oklahoma is still working on him. For those that missed it last week, and I think I alluded to this on last week's recruiting report, that I was hearing that USC visit was not going to happen, that he had scheduled for this week or this past weekend. That did get canceled, and he ended up going to Ohio State. I had heard that if Oklahoma had really pushed for him to take that trip, he might have taken it. Oklahoma elected to let that run out to Michigan. So I think they can kind of push this along down the road a little bit, kind of see what's going to happen here with some of these defensive ends, and then they can kind of move in whatever direction they need to. So again, there's a chance Oklahoma's playing this really smart, and there's a chance Oklahoma may get burned a little bit. We'll have to see kind of what goes on here.
the gambles of the recruiting world, especially in the world of 2025. So that's a full recap from coming out of Oklahoma's barbecue weekend. Obviously, Bowe Bentley got things started on Friday night, which was good news. You get the commitment of Beau Jandreau on Monday afternoon. As for commitment dates coming up, Josh, I know that you've wrote a story about this. You put it on SoonerScoop.com, but just real quick for the YouTube viewers out there, Dallas Dickerson on June 24th. Desmond Green, the offensive tackle out of South Carolina, Timberland High School, June 26th, coming up on Thursday. He's expected to make an announcement. Craig Dandridge on June 26th as well. Deacon Schmidt makes his announcement on June 28th. Braden Presley out of Bixby High School, July 3rd. Tyler Ruxer, a tight end that we've talked about countless times here on the program, making his announcement on July 7th. Jordan Clay on July 11th. And Zachary Turner out of Duncanville, the wide receiver, tight end kind of combo there. Maybe a little bit more wide receiver for Oklahoma, July 12th. So a number of commitments or commitment announcement dates set in stone here over the next couple weeks. And it could be pretty busy for Oklahoma in this 2026 class.
Yeah, guys. I mean, this is where they may reel in half their class in the next month. That's very. I don't even know if possible is right. Well, probable is probably the correct way to put that, because there's a whole host of guys, and some of them we just talked about, that I don't have a date for yet, that are going to come down here in the near future. So, you've got to keep an eye on all these guys. And the joy for you guys is I leave town on the 5th of July.
Oh, so they'll all commit.
There is yeah, exactly. So the good news for OU fans is that July 5th should start a real run of commitments, because that is the way this always works. But yeah, guys, I feel really of the guys you're listing, I feel really good about Tyler Ruxer. I feel really good about Deacon Schmidt. I'm teetering with the idea of putting in a prediction for Deacon Schmidt, who's down to OU, Alabama, and Colorado. I just think Oklahoma's done a really good job there. I think he just thinks the world of Bill Bedenbaugh. The only reason I probably haven't is just because I've seen Alabama pull off too much in my past to get too confident about it. But, they're going to get some of the guys on this list. Danny Odom is going today. I don't think that's happened yet. As you see this, it may well have. I think that's going to be Nebraska. Dickerson's going to be a really interesting one. And, guys, and that's fun because that could see things shoot off in a lot of different directions for Oklahoma. We're talking about all the wide receivers and the numbers crunch. We didn't even factor Dickerson into that conversation with Dandridge and Clay and Pettit and all these other guys. So wide receiver could get pretty wild pretty fast, because it might be a deal where if a guy, let's say OU can surprise people with Zach Turner. If OU's short on spots, they're going to say, hey, man, we can't wait for July 12th. You're going to need to do something if this is what you want to do. And like I said, it could get very hot and heavy at receiver if a few dominoes fall in the right direction.
It shouldn't be a surprise that Emmett Jones has his hands in a multiple scenarios situation for Oklahoma at the wide receiver position. So we will be keeping up to date on it on SoonerScoop.com, as well as here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Josh, we appreciate it. George, we appreciate it. Thank you to Eddie. As always, we will talk to you next time on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.
Thunder up.